Okay, are you ready to work with me a little this morning? Okay? Okay, so today is the third Sunday of Advent. And this is the Sunday that we sing the Magnificat. We're going to hear the choir sing it at the offertory, and we got kind of a taste of it in our opening hymn. But what you may not know is that there is a chorus to the song that you probably haven't heard before. And it goes like this, and I want you to repeat after me. You can't stop the revolution. Keep doing that. You can't stop the revolution. 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 Okay. Now we got to put the verses in. Okay? So let's get our clap going. God has cast down the mighty from their seat. You can't stop the revolution. The poor and the hungry have plenty to eat. You can't stop the revolution. The proud are scattered in their conceit. You can't stop the revolution. The power of God just can't be beat. You can't stop the revolution. 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 Okay, have a seat. Get your blood going. Now, about 20 years ago, I was doing my summer unit of clinical pastoral education, working as a hospital chaplain in a group. And in our group was a woman in her mid-20s who was a deeply faithful Roman Catholic and was also feeling a strong call to the priesthood. And time over and over again, we as a group sat together as she wrestled with what God was trying to tell her in the midst of what seemed to be an impossible contradiction. And one morning, with an incredibly pained voice, she cried out, as a woman in the church, you know who I'm supposed to be like? Mary, a virgin mother. How am I supposed to live up to that? And yeah, there's a little funny, but there was pain in her voice. There was deep, deep pain, and it's the pain in her voice that has never left me, and that's why I remember that conversation more than 20 years later. And the thing is, she is absolutely right. For 2,000 years, we as the church have used Mary to keep women down. And the deepest irony and injustice is that Mary is one of the most powerful, revolutionary figures of all time. And so today is the third Sunday of Advent, and today we sing Magnificat, the song of Mary. So let's talk about who Mary really is. Now, we first meet Mary in the Annunciation, which itself is a revolutionary story. The story of the Annunciation is not meant to be a literal history, but a way to assert Christ's divinity. You see, ancient religions are full of stories of the gods coming down and impregnating human women, and Luke would have known that his readers would have these stories in mind as they heard the story of Gabriel and Mary. And so the language used in the Annunciation would have been similar and familiar, and it is also deeply problematic. Because no matter how great the honor might be to bear the child of God, the language used is the language of intimate partner violence and rape. You will conceive in your womb and bear a son. And the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. There is not one iota of consent in this scene. And yet, In a deeply revolutionary act, in the midst of this overpowering, Mary, even though her agency might be compromised by the angel's power, still courageously claims her right to consent. Let it be with me according to your word, Mary says. Hey, Gabriel. Hey, God. I know you didn't ask if this was okay with me, but God, remember that I was created in your image and given not just the power of creativity and generativity, but the power of choice. And so even though you didn't ask, I am claiming that power and telling you, yes, this is okay with me. Yes, this is my choice. Let it be to me according to your word. And then we hear immediately that the angel departed from her, and I like to think that Gabriel departed with his tail between his legs, having been appropriately put in his place. And maybe under his breath, Gabriel was saying, how dare she? Doesn't she know who I am? What a nasty woman. Which, of course, by now we know is code for a woman who dares to assert her power. Yeah. And Gabriel would have been right. Because Mary was the mother of the revolution. And throughout our scriptural story, God uses the power of subversive, fierce, nasty women to midwife revolutions into being. It happened all the way back in Genesis with Rebekah, when she asked God why her pregnancy was so difficult, and God told her a tale of impending revolution, saying, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger. Now, God didn't give this message to Abraham or Isaac. He gives it to Rebekah, the bold, nasty mother of nations. And Rebekah takes this information and becomes the mother of the revolution, exercising subversive power to bring about the will of God. She orchestrates the deception of her husband that causes him to bless the younger son, Jacob, instead of the older son, Esau, thus fulfilling the word that God had given to her, that the elder shall serve the younger, taking the power arrangement of the way things are and turning it completely on its head. It happened with Hannah. Hannah, who asked for and received the gift of a child in Samuel, who was going to revolutionize the entire social and political system of Israel, and who responds with a song that is not merely the rejoicing over an impending birth, but the heralding of a revolution. It happens with Deborah and Esther and Ruth and Huldah and a line of subversive, powerful women that men surely thought were nasty, who are too numerous to mention. And then we come to Mary. Mary, the mother of the greatest revolution of all. Mary, the mother of the revolution that is not just about the nation of Israel, but the mother of the revolution that is about every tribe and nation and language and people. The mother of God's revolution of love that will join earth to heaven and heaven to earth. And Mary takes the words of the ancestor. She takes the song of Hannah and she claims it as her own. And in it she claims as hers the greatest power a human being can possibly have. Magnificat. My soul magnifies God. Mary is a freedom fighter. Mary is a warrior in the streets, and the Magnificat is her protest chant. Mary sings, my soul proclaims God's greatness. My soul rejoices in God my Savior. Because even though this world spits on me and my sisters, God favors me. Because even though I am forced to submit to a culture that sees me as less than human, God knows better, and soon you will too. For from this day all generations will call me blessed. For in a world where women were passed as property from father to husband, And just as a side note, when I speak of women here, I am conscious that the church, like much of the world, is still emerging from the thought context of gender binaries. And so when I say woman today, I am referring to anyone who self-identifies as being along a part of that aspect of the gender spectrum. Let the church say amen. Okay. For in a world where a woman was not allowed to enter the temple beyond the ghettoized court reserved for her, for in a world where women were not even counted as members in the synagogue count, in a world where women could not be rabbis or even disciples of rabbis, where women could not even recite the Shema or read the Torah, in a world where only the male high priest was permitted to speak the name of God, Mary dares not only speak it, she dares to sing it out loud and proud, and not only to sing God's name, but to tell us who God is. And in the name of God, herald God's coming revolution of love. The strength of God's arm. The proud scattered in their conceit. The mighty cast down from their thrones, and the exalting of the lowly. The hungry filled with good things, and the rich sent empty away. Israel seemingly abandoned and under occupation rescued, and mercy brought to all who sin. Promise restored, faith renewed, liberation achieved. You can't stop the revolution. But how we have tried. Mary was a powerful woman, the iconic and literal mother of the revolution that became the Jesus movement. And for 2,000 years, the church, co-opted by patriarchal society, snugly in the back pocket of those who would use the power of the gospel and the language and trappings of the faith to buttress their true religions of patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy, have kept women, and especially women of color and queer women, down, because we have known that the ultimate threat to the church as it is today is not secularism, because that battle has already been fought and lost. The ultimate threat to the church as it is today is not the temptations of Satan to follow me and all this will be yours, because that battle has already been fought and lost. No, the ultimate threat to the church, the threat that is our hope of salvation, is the true gospel message that still burns in the hearts of the mothers of the revolution, that still has a chance to change the church back into what she should have been, what she has fallen away from, which is God's movement of revolution, of tikkun olam, the repair of the world, the transformation of society. And so for 2,000 years, we have tried to bury the women deep. But as the Greek poet Dinos Christianopoulos wrote, and as was adopted by the Zapatista movement in Mexico, the women say, "You tried to bury us, but you forget that we were seeds." And how we have done this to Mary. We have taken this young, defiant, fierce woman of color. We have taken the mother of the revolution and turned her into a mild, mute, domesticated icon of passive holiness at best, and God's Sally Hemings at worst. In promoting what has become the iconic characterization of Mary, the church has effectively mansplained women about their very identity and role as women for nearly 2,000 years. And you can make a good argument that in this sermon, I'm still doing it too. And that instead of me preaching about this, I should have had the presence of mind to give up this pulpit to a woman this morning. But since I am here, it's the kind of thing you realize Saturday morning at 4 o'clock when it's too late. Since I am here, it is up to me to confess that the patriarchal church has told women, this is who you are supposed to be: a white, submissive, virginal mother. And we have said that anything of your identity that represents true womanhood has no place in the church, has no place in the eyes of the divine. In the same way that we have whitened Jesus, we have enfeebled Mary. And the sin we have to confess is that it has not been an accident. We have done it by design. Because every time we are successful, the true revolution that could change the church and change the world goes into hibernation a little while longer. We do it every time we praise Mary's submissiveness. We do it every time we push women aside or comment first about a woman's appearance. Every time we ask women to submit and adapt and change to suit the proclivities of men. And we as men have gotten so used to doing this that we don't even notice that we're doing it anymore. Such is the not noticing the water you are swimming in nature of power and privilege. I did it myself last Sunday, when instead of either shutting up or perhaps amplifying and supporting the wisdom of Sally Howard in the Rector's Forum, wisdom that is based on years of experience, hard work, and expert training that I sure don't have in things like counseling and trauma therapy, instead I ran over her words with my own. I took up way more space than was rightfully mine and subjugated her superior wisdom to my own, and for that I deeply apologize. You said, no. Mary is the mother of the revolution. And the heart of the revolution has been, is, and always will be women. Women who have been pushed from their land, ripped from their homes, and forced to begin again in a strange land. Women who have always had to work harder for less or even no pay. Women whose worth has been seen as the pleasing of men rather than the bearing of God. Rebecca, Hannah, Mary. They remind us that God's revolution of love has been, is, and always will be led by fierce, nasty women. By women who do not fit into the boxes that we men for thousands of years have tried to jam them into. God's revolution will be led by queer women, trans femmes, and gender nonconforming persons. God's revolution of love will be led by profane women, by women who do not care to be told by men that it is their responsibility to dress or act a certain way if they want to avoid assault. God's revolution will be led by women who dance on tables late at night and walk home with their heels in their hand as the sun creeps over the horizon. By women who are brilliant scholars and theologians and who do not care what you think about their Match.com profile. God's revolution will be led by women who are bishops and rabbis, senators and CEOs, priests and protesters. By women who, whether their choice is birth control, the burqa, or both, refuse to have their bodies, minds, and spirits enslaved by men anymore. God's revolution will be led by the courage of mothers whose single-minded and single-hearted devotion to revolution comes from the reality and the fear of their baby's blood flowing in the streets. By women who lay down in front of tanks and cradle each other's heads in their arms as they cry. God's revolution of love will be led, as it always has been, by women who magnify our Heavenly Mother, who became human in Jesus the Christ, whose souls magnify the God whose name and whose child they proudly bear for all to hear. Women who remind all humanity of the God who has cast down the mighty from his seat, who gives the poor and the hungry plenty to eat, who scatters the proud in their conceit, the God whose power just can't be beat. Mary sings Magnificat. My soul magnifies God. And she sings it with defiance. She sings it with grace. She sings it with power. And today we remember Mary. Mary, the blessed mother of God's revolution, the revolution that God calls all of us to follow, the revolution we have tried so hard to suppress, the revolution that will never be stopped. Amen.